Hey everybody, welcome to GT Live. My name is Brandon Jones. I am your host. Today, the game we will be playing is Unfinished Swan, being performed by Mr. Daniel Bloodworth over there. Have you played Unfinished Swan before, Blood?
Yeah, it's been a while.
He's experienced. He knows what he's doing. Today, we're giving away awesome codes, you guys. We've given away some good codes in the past. I'm super stoked about this. We're giving away 4 codes to Life is Strange. All of it. The entirety of Life is Strange. And we'll be giving those to the 4 questions that Mr. Michael P. Huber prefers. You'll be chatting with him during the duration of the show. And we have 2 very special guests, Miss Tracy Fullerton from USC and Rob Emanuel, who you guys might recognize if you are fans of GameTrailers.
The lesser Slusser is...
The lesser Slusser, yeah.
The lesser Slusser, the lesser Rob Slusser.
We sent it out on Twitch and somebody was like,
everyone,
all right, Rob
Slusser is going to come back. No, I'm so sorry. It's not Rob Slusser.
You got to admit, we've had some dynamite Robs here at
Yeah,
GameTrailers.
you've had some really good Robs, but I can never good as Rob Slusser.
We've done pretty good in the Rob department. The Mike department, not so much.
So
But the Rob department, really, really great.
I would like to know, what is the P in P. Hubert stand for?
Patrick.
Oh, look at that, Patrick.
All right. Okay.
There you go, Patrick.
Good conversation starter,
good,
that one.
Solid start going into it.
So let me go through everything because you wanted to clarify what it is that you do because you do 10 billion things. So you are the chair of USC Interactive Media and Games, which is super awesome. The director of the Game Innovation Lab, which is maybe even cooler than that, and the author of the Game Design Workshop, which is a book or is an ongoing thing?
It's a book and it's a class.
Okay, it's both.
Yes.
So let's talk. And Rob, you are the student advisor for the Interactive Media and Games at USC.
I'm the undergrad student advisor.
And of course, the co-caster of the Indie Megacast.
And the
great
Indie
podcast.
Megacast. And we have G4 at Sci-Fi Games starting up again. So I'm the writer on that.
Congratulations, sir.
Why, thank you.
So nothing was happening in games, not only at the college I went to, but in colleges, period, when I was in school.
Well, people were playing them.
I was definitely playing games.
Playing games, yeah.
I remember
Absolutely.
Perfect Dark was a big
Perfect
one
Dark.
that came out when I was in college. Not to date myself, but...
Yeah, GoldenEye was a big one.
Right.
That Halo.
I'm so old. Okay, I'm not even going there.
But to actually, learn, to meet really amazing people and to learn about games and to practice that art and to really encourage younger people to, pursue a career in video games. In video game development, not video games journalism. That's a bad idea. But video game development is really what
that's
you
going
want.
to just go away any day now.
Yeah, it's really, really what you want to be focusing on.
Downhill.
So you actually shortened it to USC Games, is what you.
So
really
USC Games is an umbrella. It's a kind of meta brand for all of the degree programs. There are actually 4 degrees at USC, 2 in the Interactive Media and Games division, which, as you mentioned, I'm the chair of, and there's 2 in the Computer Science Games program. So there's basically, we have a plethora of ways you can study games. You can focus on the design and the development. You can focus on programming. You can focus on the music, the animation, all these other things, and we put them all together and get everyone working across all these disciplines.
And how long have you been doing it?
Well, we started I started teaching there in a basement in 1999. Okay, seriously, it was like an adventure, a text adventure to get guests to come speak. I had to say, okay, go down the stairs and be careful. Sometimes it's flooded, But that was in 1999, and we had one class, which was the Game Design Workshop, which was what my book came from. And then in 2002, we started the very first MFA program in interactive media. So the other programs came on over the years after that. But so we've been doing it for 13 years now.
Oh, yeah.
So it's cool that you guys are local, but I mean, it's not really that we're just playing favorites and that there's games divisions all over the place, and we just happen to have USC because they're local. You guys were, I wrote it down here somewhere. Someone said you were super awesome. Somebody voted you guys.
We are the
best.
#1 game design
Princeton
school.
Review, the #1 game design program.
Yeah, it's a burden.
It was 3 years running. Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
When people just up your reputation,
Whatever.
it's just the worst.
Somebody
Oh my
voted
God.
us that, and
Yeah.
now we have to carry that burden.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
Over
I'm
and
just
over
kidding.
again,
That was
year
a
after
great
year.
honor. It's spectacular. I mean, it's just really actually spectacular that the Princeton Review is looking at game programs, first of all. And the fact that they liked ours is really nice.
So do you see that as something that's growing? Do you want it to grow, or do you want to just have corner the market there on having a really compelling and broad gaming?
We want to grow. We want games as a field to grow. If you look at the change in who's playing games, who's admitting to playing games, these days over the past 10 years.
Because that's the first step.
Right. That's what you got to admit admit you got a problem.
You have to admit,
right?
yeah, that you're going into something
Yes,
completely.
you're going to play some games. And so really what's happening is, my mother, she admits she plays the games, right? Now, when I was growing up, this was not something she would have admitted, but she plays the games, right? People are playing more than ever. And not only are they playing games for entertainment, there's this whole new, sort of explosion of games for, helping you be fit or, helping you be more politically active or all these other, these kind of amazing things.
Or just education, learning.
Education, learning, help you learn Mandarin. If you want to learn Mandarin, you can play a game for it, or
You know,
algebra.
Different sort of stories are being told in games now that have never, usually weren't touched before. You have stories for, all sorts of, happy stories, sad stories. We have, like even this Unfinished Swan, I think is just sort of like a great sort of story where you're not actually attacking things, but you're just sort of discovering as you go along.
Starts off on a real happy note immediately, right out of the gate,
Right
just nothing
instead.
but smiles.
But
Exactly.
smiles going
Yeah.
into it, but it's
Yeah.
definitely, this is definitely a very unique story that you probably wouldn't have seen 10, 12, 15 years ago while we were thinking about making games.
So Rob, you made the jump from journalist. You
Yes.
still are a journalist. You
Yes.
still are covering games.
Yes.
And I think that's really great that
Well, thank you.
you're really talking about a lot of games that not a lot of people are talking about, because it's a huge market. There's every week people talk about the big AAA games. You look ahead at the month and it's like, oh, okay, what big games are we going to cover? And every week, every day, there's
Right.
at least like a dozen games that come out that a lot of
Right.
people get a chance.
And the thing is, like, even covering the games, like the indie games, as everyone likes to call it, it's still, I only cover like the ones that I know about. There's so many out there that come out that you don't know about because maybe it just doesn't come up on Steam or it doesn't come up like through the usual means. Even to look through like something like the iPhone or Android or anything like that, even like simple like Twine games that are so amazing and are being told, having so many different stories going into it. Like, it's hard to keep up with so much good stuff out there. And the best thing is that you can come back to these games even, a year later, 2 years later, and they're still just as good, or like they're still sort of new because you've never seen them and they have sort of like a look and a style and a story that you haven't heard before.
I think, we'll get a little bit more into specifically about the independent games and
Sure.
kind of where that market's at. But whenever I go to big conventions, those are always the names that I take away. Like, it's fun to play Evolve at something like PAX, but at the same time, it's so much better to learn about some game I've never heard before.
Right,
Try it
you
out.
sort of want to find that
Yeah.
hidden gem. You want to find something that you can sort of share with other people, or something that sort of speaks to you. And that's where I think like a lot of games are going nowadays. I like to tell people it's like going to like a bookstore, where it's not the 5 books that they put out in the front. It's all the other books that you can find in the different sections that you're going into it. It's like, well, maybe you like science fiction. Fine. We've got so many great science fiction games coming. We have so many great RPGs that have come out in the past couple of months that are just like turn-based, and like Pillars of Eternity, I think is such like a really cool RPG that has like a great sort of like story and has a lot of great like action to it. But like, you wouldn't have seen it like a couple of years ago, because back then they didn't think anyone wanted to play like a turn-based RPG. Who does that sort of stuff? We want guns and shooting and fast things like that.
And so, like, the passion that you feel naturally in a game like that is incredible, because it's really clear the people behind it, loved it and wanted to make this game because they wanted to play it themselves.
Sure.
So for people in the GT community that miss you terribly, Rob,
That's like one or two.
well, there's 2 people watching right now
Not Slusser.
that really want to know what Rob Slusser's up to nowadays.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are your responsibilities as a student advisor at USC?
Student advisor at USC. Basically, it's a lot of helping students to sort of find their own ways and sort of help them find their voice within the community that's going into it. A lot of students, I'm sure a lot of people going into college, even though they're like, I really want to make video games, just sort of like get to that point where it's like, I really want to make video games, and I don't know. I want to do something. How am I going to make a living out of this? And then so it's a lot of like pointing them in the right direction, helping them find like people to talk to, helping them find like areas to go into, or even just playing video games. I find that even though a lot of our students are like very passionate about video games. Sometimes they don't know about some of the great games that other people are making out there, or other people are playing, or things that they can sort of like get their hands on, where they're like, wow, this is so amazing. This gives me so many great ideas of things that I could be doing with my own work going into it.
So you mentioned, Tracy, that you have kind of 4 main roads that you can go down.
Sure.
If you're looking to get a degree.
There's 2
in gamedom.
at the undergraduate level, and there's 2 at the graduate level, essentially.
So have you found people that kind of go in and aren't really sure where they're going, and maybe like will swap from one
Absolutely.
to the other, or
they definitely
and they have the freedom
swap,
to do that?
And not only do they swap, they collaborate. So the program is actually designed so that there's a track of production classes from the beginning to intermediate to advanced, where they all come together from the various disciplines and sit in class together. And I think that creating those bonds, that's the first step towards creating indie teams and prototypes of ideas, and really figuring out who you can work with, how you work best, what you want to say with games, what it is that you want to express, and so by getting every one of the separate disciplines in together and getting them working on these games together, that's the kind of beginning, the seeds of what we try to do.
Speaking of disciplines, I was a theater major that went into film. I auditioned for USC Theater, didn't get in. The co-founder of GameTrailers.com, Mr. Jeffrey Grotz, applied for USC Film, didn't get in.
Oh no!
Do you find that it helps to have a collaboration with the film and theater departments? Because video games need voiceover, they need acting, they might need motion capture.
Yeah, so we actually sit within our program, Interactive Media and Games, sits within the School of Cinematic Arts. And our students take classes in writing for games, but within the writing division. And they take classes in animation, and they work with students whose goal is to go and work at Pixar, right? So there's a lot of overlap. And things like VO, that's exactly right. Motion capture, we have one of the largest motion capture stages in LA for the students to use. And
That's so cool.
I know, it's super cool.
It's like, I want to know these things, but it also makes me so sad, because it's just like, you wonder, like, where would my life have gone if I had gotten into game development that early? It's incredible.
It's hard not to be a little Star Trek. I actually got to use the motion capture stage myself from one of my projects, and because it's faculty, you can also sign up and use it. So, I got a little bit like starry. I'm like, I can't believe I get to just use this.
Well, I wouldn't want to leave. As a student, I wouldn't want to graduate.
Well, a lot of
them
them
keep using this equipment.
Well, a lot of them, we still have a lot of people who love to stick around, and like they start their own sort of companies, and they actually, one of the things that we do encourage is, bringing our students work for them, and then they go off and they, work on their company, and those alumni now hire the students going into it. And so it's this perpetual sort of like motion, and they know exactly going into this, it's like, this is what these are the skill traits that like coming out of this whole division, that we know we want you to do this, this, and this for us going into it.
And we work really hard to get them to give back. Right? Not in money, but in time and sort of mentorship, right? So a lot of the alumni will be mentors, advisors for the upcoming students who are doing their games. So we see them around, and maybe they're not playing in their motion capture stages, but they are playing, with our students and coming around to all the events and coming to game jams, and it's a really tight community, actually.
That's great. So, speaking of moving on and making a game, so we chatted about what game would be appropriate this week, and you gave us a list, and of those, Bloodworth noted that the Unfinished Swan, waiting for Journey to get on PS4, but
it just recently.
Did it?
I want to say
it's got to be coming.
It's
gotta
coming.
be coming.
Yeah, it's something close.
I was over there, and I know they said something about it, but we don't want to
But I, wanted to pass on to viewers that if they have not checked out Unfinished Swan, it is available on PS4. Blood is playing on PS4 right now, and this game is incredible. So talk a little bit about what this game and USC have to do with each other.
So this game began actually in one of our research labs. So Ian Dallas who's a creative director, was a research assistant for Mark Bolas, who runs the Immersive Lab, and Mark's a pioneer in VR and had a lot to do with a lot of the types of technology that went into things like the Oculus Rift. But Mark is also a really hard taskmaster, and he told Ian to make a prototype every week. I mean, he's just you got to bang them out, right? And Ian first made this for a VR headset and made everybody a little insane. But the mechanic was so beautiful, this mechanic of revealing a 3D space, right? Rather than just exploring an existing one, that the actual creative act of the mechanic would create and reveal at the same time. And so it stuck. And so Ian kind of went on with that, and he kept pushing on the story. And I think he took a early prototype to the Experimental Game Workshop at GDC, and possibly Sense of Wonder.
Yes.
I think
it was
that's where you got the...
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
definitely a Sense of Wonder.
Yeah, so out of those shows, first of all, I got tons of playtesting on what is this actually a story? Is this a game? What the heck is this thing? You know, this is paintball.
So it was tech first and then story
Yeah.
later.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it is an interesting story.
He always wanted to do story, and he was a writer before he came to us. But I think those things, it began in that order. It was sort of a tech demo, and then he really wanted it to be story.
And maybe not a story that's necessarily completely explained by the time you get to the end, as far as like, what was this experience?
like the
you know,
mechanic.
was this a dream? Was this actually a journey that this character takes?
Yeah,
Completely.
yeah.
You mentioned earlier that you know we're kind of moving into an era where you said your mom, you know, family members are confessing to playing games. One of the reasons why I love this game is I had to show everyone this game. I had to show my then girlfriend, now wife, this game. I had to show my parents this game. I
Yeah.
brought my PS3 home. It was just like, you have to check out this game because it exists on so many levels. There's some wicked platforming in this game. There are some segments that are actually kind of difficult to get through, but at the same time, you could just be in this opening environment for hours and just running around and splashing stuff.
Exposing it and seeing how beautiful it was. It's kind of funny because what you say about everyone playing games. So I always get the posters framed from all these games, and I went to the art store. It's a really nice art store to get the posters framed, and the guy's definitely not a gamer, I think, in my head. But I started unrolling these posters. I'm just doing Flow and I'm doing Flower, and he's like, "This is my favorite game." No, this one's my favorite game. No, and I get this one. No, this is my favorite game. And he's like, these guys, and it's just some, it's a guy who never would have played games. I think if I'd unrolled posters in there of even some of the greatest games that I've ever played before the indie movement, he probably would have just thought, "What is this, a weird person?" And so I think the culture is changing. The people are admitting, people are beginning to love games almost like literature.
So do you think this game wouldn't have worked if it was just the opening area? Like it needed a narrative, it needed
I think so.
a linear progression, that you were actually going into new environments? Because what you're looking at now isn't the entire game. It does change. They do give you new
there's
elements.
Obviously,
different ones that go into, and they expand. So it's not just painting things, but after a while you're using water. You're having to use balls of light to move from place to place, going into it. It's really cool. But it's still the same sort of deal that you're dealing with, or the mechanic, the feeling that you're basically just tossing balls or globs or going into it. There's nothing new. There's no power-ups. There's nothing you're having to do secret moves in order to progress to the next level. I mean, it's just you learn how to spit paint out as it's going.
One of my favorite comments from someone that I showed the game early on, because you start in this, very square room, that you can eventually reveal if you paint everything. And I was showing it to someone, and they were like, "Well, what if you paint everything? Won't then it be easily, just as difficult to walk around because the environment is now completely black instead of completely white?" And you're like, "Yes." So you do have to show a little bit of constraint if
Yes.
you want to explore the environment. You have to not paint everything so you can see where you're going.
And it's funny because I remember, I think the first time that I was doing an interview about this, looking at the first screen, he would wait, and just Dallas would watch and be like, and I would be like, "What?" And the thing is, at the very first screen, the very beginning of the game itself, there's nothing to tell you what to do. There's no button to press. There's no hit A to move on, hit stick to move forward.
Excellent camera work there, Blood. Excellent camera work on the giant monster reveal.
Excellent. And there's none of that going into it, and that's sort of how the game is. The game is not going to tell you how to play the game. The game is just going to let you play the game the way you want to play the game.
Which isn't easy. It can't be. I've dabbled in game development, but never produced something to this scale. And that's not. Can you teach that? Is that something that you just naturally comes from a creative mind, or?
Well, first of all, I think that is, you got to break that down into many, many different things, right? Because, break it down to, first of all, a strong sense of sort of imagining an experience, right? Sort of imagining a blank slate of what it feels like to sit there and have a game not tell you what to do, right? And then it's also, there's technical expertise. I mean, Ian is self-taught and did the majority of all the technical aspects of the original part of the game himself, and really nerded out on that. So I think you can teach that, but mostly people teach themselves those kinds of things. What you, I think, can do is you can teach people process. You can teach them to iterate, to listen, to get the right kinds of playtesters, people who are not going to just smile and tell you what you want to hear, but tell you, they're not going to care who you are and what you're doing and what you want. They're going to just hurt your feelings right there and tell you the truth.
So we do.
But I think that's really crucial in education. I actually noticed that a lot because I was in theater, and so there were a lot of, like getting through high school, and like once all these high school friends are like getting all the leads in the shows, like we're like, oh, I'll continue to do this in college, and it's like someone needs to tell you that you're not that great. You do need to work. Everyone needs to work. It's just like you're never like a master. You'll spend your whole life learning your trade, and there's always new things to learn.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my next question: Is there an age limit for applicants for your department at USC?
No, actually, no.
No.
We do.
Have you had some people like in the industry or people like myself that is gaming journalists that would
definitely
like
at the
to get into
graduate
game
level, we
development?
absolutely have had people come back to school. We've had people come back from ex-Imagineers. Aaron Reynolds, who we were talking a little about earlier, came back after working at Disney. So, there's no age limit. Absolutely not. I mean, the truth is that the limit is really in, can you take the time out of your life? And that's so at an undergraduate degree, it's really getting to be a whole person, right? Getting to be a person we can put out in the world, right?
Right.
But at the graduate degree, it's about taking some time out of the necessary grind of life to develop your voice, to develop, to maybe do a pivot on what it is you want to do in the world. Like people who've maybe been programming want to come in and be designers, or people who've been artists want to come in and be producers, whatever it is, doing a pivot and taking that time out to really focus in and get that expertise. So if you can take the time,
I'm tempted. Come on. I was reading up on all the cool stuff you guys are doing on the USC website, and just looking at these pictures of students using all this awesome equipment. I'm like, man, I want to go to school. What's wrong with me?
Yeah, we're doing like a lot of really great stuff, like a lot of VR games are being done. We actually just had a game jam at the museum.
Yes,
at
the Getty.
The Getty Jam.
Yeah, that was great. Rob put that together, and
that was overnight. We got a bunch of it was like 30 students to stay over at the Getty Museum to make games to help people sort of discover art, as it were, going into it. And that's something that's really fun.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's like looking at games in sort of a different way. How we can use it to explain things or to bring something else out in the environment.
Yeah, we have jams all the time. So if you can't spare the whole time to come back and get a graduate degree, you can always come back for a jam.
Yeah, we have the Global Game Jam. I think we were one of the biggest.
I think we were the biggest site in North America, as far as I know.
Breaking records, guys.
Yeah,
exactly. Well, it's we have that whole building to ourselves, so we can start packing people into different rooms.
So speaking of really smart, clever, talented, creative Ians, Mr. Ian Hank is in the booth.
Ian Hank.
Hi.
He's on camera. He's got, speaking of education, right behind, who is perfectly hidden behind him, Mr. Don Casanova.
I don't have your
is picking up the TriCaster trade. How's it going in there, Don? Is it easy or hard, or?
So far, so good.
So far, so good. Nice.
Nothing's on fire.
So Ian, so usually around this time in the show, we check in with you just to see what's up. See, are you on your second or third playthrough of Bloodborne? What is this? New game plus one or new game plus two?
I'm on plus one.
Just plus.
I'm doing Chalice Dungeons.
Single
and
plus.
stuff, yeah. About halfway through.
New Game Plus?
I'm currently doing New Game Plus as well. I might have some questions for you.
Okay.
If I run into some speed bumps down the road. Definitely skip some bosses on that first playthrough.
Yeah.
But we can also make a really smooth transition into this week's number 11, which is our feature where we talk about the unfortunate game, along with many others. It did not make our top 10 countdown. This week's top 10 countdown is the top 10 crowd-funded games,
Nice.
which I feel is appropriate
Yes,
having you guys
completely.
on. It was kind of tough, like figuring out like what games are out, what games were actually crowdfunded, and for what.
Sure.
One of the games that Ian, I think, was a huge fan of that we previously did a Just Played on that almost made the list but wound up at number 11 was Race the Sun.
It's true.
So Ian, sell me. What's Race the Sun?
Race the Sun is a really fast. I guess it's a racing game. They call it Race the Sun, but
it's a speed game.
yeah, it's more of a speed game. It's sort of like an endless runner, but cool, I guess.
I'll take that.
You're in a space or a solar powered kind of hovercraft spaceship thing, and the sun is going down, and you try to make it as far as you can, and there are all kinds of obstacles like these sunflower things, which I've actually never seen in the game before, that you're trying to avoid. And you unlock, you progress, your ship gets better and better and better, and you unlock crazy new modes and stuff. It's just a lot of fun.
I found a really great trailer for this today that it's actually coming up in a little bit where they had a bunch of YouTubers footage of them playing the games, and like every one of them was screaming. Like,
Right.
everybody of them was just crying bloody murder because it's a super fast game.
It's a super fast game. Another great thing about it is that everyone, so for one full day, so you are actually racing the sun for one full day, everyone has the same track. So you're trying to be like on the top of the leaderboards going into it for this track. So you can play it over and over again, but you only have 24 hours.
It's such a rush to get on the leaderboard, like top 10 or whatever. You're
Yeah.
just like, yes!
Going into it. And so, yeah, you have to sort of like stay in the sunlight, but you're also trying to avoid things. And as you'll see, like later on, like the shadows get a little bit longer, sort of like you're having to find your way through things. You're having to sort of like depend on whether or not you're going to get into the shadows in order to avoid like a bad situation and lose a little speed, or you're going to stay in the sun and maybe find yourself in a worse situation going forward as you basically start flying through these levels.
Going forward is what the
Going
game should be
forward, that's all
called.
you have. There's no backwards, there's no stop, there's no like, can we just pause for a little bit
Nope.
going into it? And then you pick up like there are certain crystals that you pick up that can give you more time as you're going forward.
What?
Whoa,
Yeah, there you
whoa,
are.
I'm in the
too much.
B-roll. What's happening?
I tried to cut those out, but that one slipped in there. Sorry.
Oh, it's all right. I like looking at myself.
Yeah, we
Who
looked so much
doesn't?
better back then, man.
Yeah.
We've aged so much
Oh
since
my
that was shot.
God. Were you ever that young?
Yeah. I've just noticed it's a very monochromatic episode of GT Live.
Yeah.
Can we
It's
transition between that
It's a theme.
and Unfinished Swan? Yeah, look at that.
There we go. Very, from one to the other. It's beautiful.
One to the other.
Color schmuller.
Well, it's all about like being able to convey whatever you need to the player. So you'll find like in Unfinished Swan, they use color, but very rarely. And so when you see it, it becomes a very sort of like
Like in the
it's
menus, yeah.
your aesthetic. It has something to say about it. It's the yellow duck feet. It's the pink balloons that you find. It is the yellow crowns on top of like the king's head that you're going into it. Like every bit of color in that game has something to say.
There's a noir game coming out that I can't remember the name of it. You're a detective, and it's all black and white except for
Yeah.
red.
Oh,
like
it's-
red really
it's,
highlights some of
it's
the
White
murder
Knight?
weapons and stuff, possibly.
There's one called White Knight where you.
White Knight is out.
That's already out. Yeah.
Yeah.
That one's on the PS4 where you play as it's sort of like a noir game. You always have to stay in the light going into it, but it's very much like dark shadows, like everywhere you see things sort of in the background, and you're trying to figure out like this murder mystery as you've stumbled upon this like seemingly empty house that may not be as seemingly empty as you thought it was going into it.
It's a spooky game.
It is a super spooky game.
Do you find that's a comment that comes up a lot when you're critiquing game design? They're just like too much. You really need to focus, the player so they understand where they're going and what they can use and what they can't.
Usually it's not enough guidance. I mean, seriously, understanding how to direct a player's attention is one of the things that takes the longest things for students to learn, and that's what you get from playtesting, because you watch people turn around and head the other direction, even though you've got something blinking in front of them, but they were supposed to go towards the blinking light, and they didn't. And I'm like, well, you're gonna have to fix that.
That's one of the favorite things I love about my wife is if there's a door in your game, she's trying that doorknob. There's nothing, it's just like, why would you put a door in there if I'm not? I can't go in the door.
Well, that's perfectly fine. I mean, I'm always for like, is there a quest in the game? I'm going in the opposite direction because I know there's something better.
Same thing.
There's probably something better in somewhere else in this game, because if you made an alcove like somewhere,
why would you do that?
Why would you make these things if you're not going to fill it up with something cool and amazing?
I gotta tell you, one of my favorite playtesting stories was actually really early on in Journey, and Genova has told this story too, so I don't feel bad saying it. But I played a really, really rough, I think it was like a Flash prototype of what would become Journey, and but it was multiplayer. And the first thing I did was literally, you were supposed to cooperate. There was 4 people at that time, and you're supposed to cooperate. And I just went off on my own, and I'm like looking at the corners of everything and seeing what they've hidden, if they've hidden anything, right? And Genoa's sitting there going like, oh, Jesus Christ, she's doing it wrong, right? But, in the final game, obviously you can do that to great, there'll be like amazing things to find, so. I'm glad I did it for them.
And and a perfect avenue if you have students and you have teachers, your integrated environment that you can show people stuff and get a lot of different people from different, elsewhere in the U.S. or possibly not from the U.S. Coming in to learn stuff and bringing their own experience to the game.
Again, it's amazing all the different voices and sort of like the different sort of stories that are now coming out with all these games. It always amazes me like what can be told now with games. I'm always 80 Days was one of my favorite games from last year, and I think it did such an amazing job of like going for classism. It went into racism, and it does so well. Even with the source material, even a little bit better going into to 80 Days, because it deals with these robots, these automatons as they were, and how each culture treats them as sort of like sometimes as a third-class citizen, or sometimes they'll treat them as weapons, or sometimes they'll be just frightened of them, or sometimes they just treat them as slaves and they run and hide, and the automatons feel like they can't come out, and so you run into these automatons that are trying to hide their identities, and once you find out, they plead with you not to tell anyone else.
Spoilers, Rob. Spoilers. Come on, geez, calm down.
No, but the thing is, like, you can play 80 Days like 3 or 4 times and not come across the same bits of story going into it, because you're crossing the whole world. From top to bottom, and they even put in like more DLC where you can go across the Antarctic. As it were. So you can find all these things. It's super fun.
No moon expansion yet to 80 Days?
No moon expansion, but that might be that could be a hidden ending, as it were.
So I'm sorry, Ian. Race the Sun, fast game, not fast enough to make the GT countdown.
That's okay.
So we are at the midway point of the show. It is time to watch Badass Trailer. And I had one lined up. I had a Badass Trailer ready to go. And then a badasser trailer.
A badasser trailer?
This morning for Michael B. Huber. For
Deus Ex Mankind Divided.
Pumped. Goes running into my office screaming, freaking out. Because I actually wasn't a huge fan of the CG trailer that we got for Human Revolution.
Right.
Because he was doing, Jensen was doing lots of cool abilities and stuff like that, but like not a lot of context. And we favor context here at GameTrailers. We're big fans of it. And I love the storytelling in this trailer. It is a badass trailer. Check it out.
We are human beings. Each and every one of us. This must not go on. This injustice must end.
An increase in the number of terrorist attacks. highlights the danger posed by augmented citizens.
I once thought I could save the world. Now look at it.
Help me!
Sometimes you just have to let go and embrace what you've become. They've worked from the shadows for years, shaping the future, manipulating lives, controlling information. Innocents have died as they play their game.
We will not sit idly by and allow our rights to be eroded out of fear and ignorance any longer. We will not be herded into ghettos and treated as outcasts. We will stop at nothing.
The world is different now. The old rules no longer apply. So much pain. So many lies. Their darkness must end.
This should be your fight as well, brother. The promise of a golden age is over.
I won't let it happen again.
All right. That's badass. It's a badass trailer. You know, I named that segment Badass Trailer just so it wouldn't be like Trailer of the Week because there's 2 more days in the week, so we didn't really know if it was going to be the Trailer of the Week.
Could be a better trailer
We've
sometime.
had a couple of picks, and I'm just like, is this badass? It's good. I don't really know if it's badass.
Right.
That's badass. That deserves to be a badass trailer. You know who's also badass?
Matt Blair. Hey, how you
Hey,
doing?
welcome to the show, Matt Blair.
Thank you very much.
So this is the part of the show we talk about editorial, and I got a real boring topic. Independent games. I'm just going to throw it out there. Sure. But Rob, you love independent games. Yeah. Tracy, you are responsible for rearing a lot of people that are now making amazing independent games. And you actually, you beat me to the punch, Rob. You brought up the term independent.
Yeah.
Like, and you groaned. But to me, it's interesting because the one argument I would make for maintaining the classification, not that I'm totally fine if we get rid of it,
Sure.
but I wonder if there is kind of like a badge of honor that you have that, like, yes, this was really hard to make. Yes,
They're all really hard to make.
But for a much smaller group of people, you know, that like,
Right.
they're like, I wonder if it does, if that is the one positive to having this classification of independent games.
I mean, it's one thing to recognize the hard work that people put into games going into it, but at the same time, I think we've come to a point now. I think it was maybe it was the beginning of this console cycle where everyone was like, well, we need these independent games to fill in the cracks that are like the AAA titles because we got to wait for them to catch up going into it. And now it's just
You're killing me.
And now I'm just like, guys, why don't we just love the games that we're making because they're so amazing and wonderful and just have these games. These are games. These are amazing games.
I gotta be devil's advocate here.
Sure,
though.
go
I mean,
for it.
I understand that it's like become this whole sort of terrible like reflection upon itself and ad infinitum. But for me, it's like saying, do we need independent movies? Do we need independent music? Do we need independent culture? Yes, we do.
Well, yeah.
Well, whether we call it, I don't care. We could call it blue culture. I don't give a shit what we call it.
Right.
Can we say things like that?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Well, it happened.
Alright,
No going
so
back.
Sorry.
We'll go back.
Okay, but anyways,
Make a
that
note there,
stuff.
Ian.
Yeah, just write that down. But so the thing is we need independent culture.
We do.
You know, and we need people who are taking risks. We need people who are not filling in the cracks in somebody's business agenda.
No,
We need-
that's why
we need-
that's why I'm saying like they assumed that this would
We
happen.
need people who are blowing up people's ideas about what a slate is going to be.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? We need people who are blowing up what the idea of a Christmas release is going to be, right?
Right.
So I just, for me, I don't care what we call them. We can change the name because if we're all sick of it, that's a whole nother thing. But we just need a kind of difference culture in games so that the people who want to blow things up can go there and blow things up together.
Mr. Blair, how much time do you spend each year playing games that are not your typical huge multiplayer, console driving AAA
Half.
games?
I make an effort to try to keep it about half. To be honest with you, like I'll go back and I'll play my Call of Duty multiplayer once in a while just to kind of get that fix. That same fix, they make it for a reason, right? They try to make it as addicting as possible, and I like most humans kind of crave that every once in a while. So I've got my NHL sports games, I've got my shooter games. But then the other half of the time, I'm gonna go and play it. To me, I kind of equate it to the difference between a film and a movie. It's like you're really craving just to sit down and watch a popcorn movie. You're gonna do that. You want to actually sit down and watch a film and see a piece of art. You can do that because those two things exist. The same thing exists in games to me. Whether or not they're independent, though, is irrelevant to me.
Right.
Usually, more often when it's independent, it's more artsy because that's just the person took it upon themselves to make their game, and they did, and they did it for art. They didn't do it for money, necessarily speaking. I mean, obviously, we do everything we do for money most of the time, but you get the point.
Right.
So we are. Oh, sorry, Rob.
No, I was about to say, like, but even with independent games, I think there's some really just amazing, fun. I'm thinking Risk of Rain, which was the winner of the Student Independent Games Awards last year, which was done by a couple of students who came flying into the IGF and they had to fly back because they had exams like the next day, and they couldn't stay there to drink because they were underage, and it's this fun sort of like you are these tiny little guys against these monsters that are taking up like half the screen at times, and then you just play the game, you go through it over and over again, and then it's just spawning bosses. Just all the game does is spawn bosses.
I thought you were describing the independent games market for a
Yeah,
second.
exactly.
I thought you were like, they're these
Bosses.
little tiny guys, and there's these giant monsters.
That's exactly right. And it keeps spawning bosses. I love it.
It is spawning
Maybe
bosses.
that's what the point they were trying to make with that game.
It's true. It could be. But I think that if that is true, then I think that these tiny guys are actually winning in the end because it's these new voices. It's people who our mothers and our parents and our people who never thought before to pick up a game controller, finding these games, and they're like, wait a minute, I thought a game was like this. And then all of a sudden you show them a game that tells a story that they're interested in or shows them something that they never thought they could experience or gives them a chance to do something just fun.
My head spins when this question even gets asked because I gotta say, historically, the fact that we even are asking this question is a win. I mean, it's basically a huge win for our industry. The fact that we now might be tired of the whole notion of independent games.
So speaking of winning, I'm curious how you win as a graduate of your department. You're going out there into the business and you want to make games and you want them seen by people. So we're GameTrailers.com. We can just get an influx of media every single week, and every single day I watch trailers that you so lovingly prepared, Matt Blair. Thank you so much. And I'll watch these trailers and I feel bad because it's like, wow, here's this interesting game that I'm never going to play because I don't have time. And like most of the time, as much time as I can possibly fit in, play games for a living, and I still don't have time to get to these games.
Yeah.
It's like, who cries for these games? Because it's like, how are these people going to get noticed? How are people within the industry noticing them? What is your recommendation to people that are graduating from your department to make a living or get noticed or both?
Well, we work really hard with our students. I mean, first of all, I would say a good 40 to 50% just go right into the industry and they work for someone else. Maybe they have dreams of working for themselves, but they'll work for someone else first. But a whole other track, a really large percentage, will also band together and try and make companies. And that's really what you're talking about. How do you get noticed as a young company, a young developer with a title that has no name brand recognition, right? And there's actually a lot of ways that you can these days, right? Because you run a Kickstarter and you get out there and you talk to people, or you have some sort of a technological hook, like Nevermind, for example, or you are just so damn good, like that game company, that you just can't be denied, right? And I think that, or you're Asher Vollmer and you run a studio so small that when you put out your jewel of a game and maybe even if it does get eclipsed in some other ways, he still does great, right? But his studio is so damn small that he can afford to do that, right?
I recommend you name your game Titan Souls. So then you have Titanfall fans that are like, ooh, finally, like DLC. Or you have Dark Souls fans that are like, ooh, a weird sequel, cool.
But the thing is, like, Titan Souls, like, as crazy as that, it fits the game because it is that, you are going against giant things and they are going to kill you very quickly if you are not thinking about how you're playing the game or, like, the world around you as you're going into it. I mean, there's so many. Oh my God! There's so many games you don't know about. It's ridiculous. Even like we do. So I do the podcast, the Indie Mega Booth podcast, and we can only pick one game a week going into it, and so sometimes we have to go back a couple of weeks because it's like, oh, we missed this one, or we need to go pick this one back up, or there's something that we need to sort of bring back up into the limelight because it's just so good and so much fun going into it. I mean, there's just so much stuff into it. I mean, if you are interested in games, I say, like, find someone who has sort of the same interest that you do. Find someone who has sort of a voice that sounds like your voice, and then just sort of follow them along because they're probably going to play a lot of the same things that you want to be playing.
So, Matt, I'm going to throw out one indie game that people should check out, and then I'm going to boot you so we can ask these people some questions. What's a good indie game? What's the last good indie game you played?
No, see, I'm going to have the same trouble as him. But
sure.
I don't, like I said, I kind of tend not to classify them between indies or big shot games, right? Like when they come across me, usually when it's on the platform I've been kind of slacking on the PC and recently. But name anything from our countdown this week, and I've played it in the last week because we just kept talking about it. I'm like, oh yeah. I suppose the one that I played the most so far this week would be FTL, just because it's that same addictive nature.
Right.
Just keep trying. It's
right.
like, oh, and I look up and it's 3 hours later.
Of course.
So, but that's too easy.
Well, okay. I will even I'll bump that one up a little bit. FTL without the combat. Out There Omega just came out on Steam. A great game. You can also play it on your iPhone. Think of it as a game where you play as an astronaut who finds himself lost in space. You're having to deal with resources, gathering resources. You have a limited space. Pretty much every choice you make in this game could kill you. Even the simplest, I need fuel from this one place, is going to kill you because you need so much fuel, and to get fuel, it takes fuel. And sometimes you spend more fuel to get the fuel that you thought you were going to get out of it. And it's this wonderful story that just starts to unfold as you go through it. And the great thing is you run into aliens who have a language all their own, and you have to make sort of contact. You have to agree or disagree with them. And so you learn bits and pieces of their language as you're talking to them, and you figure out how to communicate with them by interaction.
Sold.
All right.
I just want to call you sometimes, Rob. I literally just want to call you out of the blue. Sure. Yeah. Just be like, Rob, I need an indie game. What do we got? You're like, well, have you tried this?
Have you tried Dark Echo? It's a game for your iOS phone.
This is why we have him. This is
why we have him. Basically is a game where it's a sort of a survival horror game, puzzle game, but it's all done by sound. So the only thing that you see are your footsteps and the sounds that everything makes around you. So you can make clicks, you can do snaps, but like as the sound goes out, you can actually see everything as it spreads out, and it shows you the world around you. But by doing that, you alert obviously other things to you. So you have to sort of like judge between the two as you're finding your way through.
Lovely.
And that's really cool. And it would seem if you had a student that was interested in something like that, like they would come into the department and say like, oh, what franchises do you really like? Like stealth. I really like stealth. I'm like, okay, well let's, don't just make an action game with stealth in it. Let's just take that genre and really blow it open.
Yeah.
Chambara. Great stealth. Great stealth.
It's an action stealth game. That's a BAFTA, BAFTA award-winning stealth game.
It's a samurai, sword game. Two samurais fighting, one black, one white, and the whole world is black and white. So depending on what color you are and where you're standing, you can be seen or not, right? Because you fade into the black or you fade into the white.
And so you sort of have to figure out where you want to be and how you're going to sort of like disguise yourself in this. Basically, it's a sword action game going into it, but you have like a strong stealth element in order to, attack the other person going into it.
Yeah.
God, this is great. I just want you to keep going, Rob. I literally want you to stay for 5 more hours and just keep rattling off all these.
We can do this. I'm always here.
Mr. Mike Huber was given the daunting task. This is the first time you've chatted with our community during GT Live. How'd that go?
We were getting into some Deus Ex a little bit there. So.
Okay, well, back on point. Focus
for a minute.
Focus.
No, it's really great. A lot of questions about the industry, about school, about, is it too late to go to school? Selling games, making games as art. What is art? What is a game?
Right.
What is art?
Hit these people
Oh
up.
my God, that's a big one.
What is art?
What is? Yeah, that's the first question. What is art?
What is art?
Just what is?
All right, give us a good question, Huber.
All right. First question. Let us go. A pilot. What games do you use as examples while teaching?
That's a great one. And what's interesting is it changes year to year. So we have some core games that you're always going to use. I mean, I'm just going to say, for me, Magic the Gathering is always going to be a core example, an amazing innovation, change the way that people thought of an entire, type of play, right? Decks of cards changed forever, right? And so I'm always going to use Magic. But then, year to year, there'll be these sort of standout games. I mean, recently we've had so many Twine games come out, and you want to make sure that people are looking at that, because you don't want them to be looking at the big graphics and the AAA games, right?
What is your favorite Twine game?
It's not. I don't think it's actually been published, but it's the one that Porpentine showed us when she came to Playthink. Do you know what the name of it is?
I do not remember.
It's just so wonderful.
She does. I would say Howling Dogs. I always tell people Howling Dogs is one of my favorites.
I would have said that before I saw this one.
You saw the other one. But Howling Dogs is out for right now, so you should.
I actually have a link to it on my desktop because I just every
just go play it every so
often.
often.
It's so awesome.
It's amazing. There's such amazing. Basically, all of Porpentine's Twine games are just like studies in like how to tell stories through like text and choices and visuals, and it's amazing.
Yeah, I don't know if this one's on. I don't know if I'd be spoiling anything. Do you think I'd be spoiling if I just sort of set it up a little bit? Would it be a bad thing?
Set it up.
Okay, so I mean, you're basically begging in a town, and you that's what you can do. You can beg, or you can like go to the next town to beg, right?
Whoa.
Yeah,
that's
seriously.
what we do.
Yeah, and if you don't get anything, if you stay there and you give a chance not to get anything, I mean, you can essentially die, right? But you could go to the next town. You could stay alive a little bit longer. You don't know what's going to happen. I mean, it's just this terrible binary choice, but it's rich with the way the towns are described. Each town has this kind of procedural engine that describes the town that you're in, and people are different in that town. I won't give it away because that's kind of the heart of it. So, but they're described beautifully in with this sort of procedural engine, and so you get a sense of who's not or who is giving you money, right? So yeah, it's just a
Wow,
gorgeous
trivia.
thing.
You think, Bloodborne's tough. You don't have to eat Bloodborne.
No. Oh, that's there's Bloodborne
stock
is
sandwiches.
nothing to cart life.
Oh
Right.
yeah.
Cart life will make you suffer in real time.
Yeah.
And
All right.
for
Sorry.
real time.
More questions.
Next up, Rosamund, I always forget how to say his name. For people who grew up without the option of going to school for games, is it too late to get in now? What is the cutoff age?
Okay, first of all, I grew up without the option of going to school for games. I just want to throw that out there. Just put that out there on the table. When I grew up, there was no school for games. Okay, so I don't think you need to go to school for games. But I do think that the kind of things we study might help people to be more informed, more subtle, more interesting game designers, right? So it's not just how do I do it. It's becoming a person who thinks about games in a really deep way in a community of people who are challenging your ideas every day, but at the same time helping you to become better at the skills it takes to make games. So what going to a game school gives you, it isn't something you can check off in a box, right? It's really becoming part of a community and becoming a kind of thinker, a kind of maker within that community.
And you're bringing life experience, and that's what's great about college. It's,
Oh, yeah.
it's just a culture shock for everybody because
Yeah.
it's
Right.
like you have people that came from different backgrounds, different schools,
Especially when you come to Los Angeles.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you have someone that's older, that's bringing their life experience, regardless of what job they have,
Yeah.
to something like the interactive medium is exciting.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
All right, next up, the Ding Garden, or the Dinger Garden.
The Dinger Garden.
As a student in the interactive arts, as a student in the interactive arts major currently, I find that the more I learn, the more daunting the act of actually building a game becomes. Without a team of hundreds, it can sometimes feel like ambition is the enemy. I'd imagine some of your students have felt the same way. What kind of advice did you give them?
Oh, scoping.
Yes.
Scoping. We're big on scoping. We're big on triaging and honing and it's actually, I'm going to be talking to my advanced students tomorrow just about this because we're coming to the end and we're going to talk about, okay, if you had to ship this game on Friday, how would you spend the next 2 days? Right? So scoping at every level. I mean, there are times when you want to blow the list up in the early stages, but a lot of game design is killing your babies. It's killing those things or finding compromises for them that don't actually compromise the vision.
Do you think the industry right now has a problem with scoping? We're getting tons of delays. Does the Zelda franchise have a problem with scoping right now?
I'm not on their team.
Yeah,
I'm not
it's
on
hard
their
to
team.
say.
Yeah,
Depending on what they're going for,
Yeah.
the prototyping, who has to check off what going into it.
Yeah.
But you hear that a lot in the industry. Like a lot of developers, when Uncharted got delayed, they came
Yeah.
out and said, we thought of some more stuff.
Yeah.
We discovered either some things we didn't know the PlayStation 4 was capable of, or some things some ideas that our team
I think
had that we didn't
sometimes
apply.
a game genuinely needs the extra time in the oven. Do you know what I mean? So sometimes that's the case, and when you're really experienced creative director, yes, and if you have the money, you're able to keep going. But we try to teach our students scope because honestly, having the time and having the money and having the clout to say we need another year in the oven, it doesn't come around very often. Usually you have to bring it in, right? So
You can't delay to next semester.
you cannot. Well, no. We actually they have to ship at the end of the semester. They have to stand up in front of those on a stage and present them, and they have to be done. Yeah.
That sounds completely terrifying.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Second thought, I don't know if I'm enjoying it, but I mean, that sounds terrifying.
Last one, tongue surgery.
Oh yeah, tongue surgery.
Do you guys teach game making more as an art form or more for selling a product of entertainment?
We do both, and I would say that's the kind of the neat yin and the yang of the program, right? So, we have our big classes where you learn in sort of pre-professional setting. You'll run a team of 30 to 40 students, and it's a year-long process with a really rigorous green light at the head of it, and like I say, a ship date at the end. So that's kind of the more industry oriented, looking to develop people and make sure they know how to run a professional team and make a product. On the other hand, we also have super small classes, like Rich LaMartian teaches our experimental games class, and they're just pumping out little weird prototypes every week, just like that. And and the interesting thing I think this year is that it really makes me proud because one of our big advanced games, blanket.
Whatever we're talking about, the student game, Closure and as well as
Outer Wilds.
Because it's not a truly independent game, Ian, unless it's really hard to pronounce, right?
Yeah. So Closure won the student game, and that's a tiny little experimental game that came out of Rich's experimental class.
It's a crazy game. It's a game. First of all, it's a game that monitors your eyes. And so whenever it's watching you. So whenever you blink, it moves forward in time.
You will play a guy who's in the hospital bed, and that's not spoiling because it's in the first. It's in the first scene. It's in the first scene, and he's basically the doctor's saying, "Open your eyes, open your eyes, open your eyes," and you got to open your eyes. And they're talking to you, and you're trying not to blink because every time you start to blink, it's as if you're going into a coma. And you have this whole interactive experience of your life.
Some Clockwork
flashing
Orange.
before your eyes.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So that's on the one side, won the student IGF. And then on the other side, you have Outer Wilds, which was one of the big advanced games teams. It was an MFA thesis project as well. And, this took, more than a year just as a student project, and then they've been working on it since. And so, that's like a big one, and that won the grand prize at the IGF. So to me, when I see both sides of the program doing really well, that makes me happy, because we don't want to just say, you got to be indie or you're going to be AAA. Games are games, and it's a beautiful form, and we want to work in all the areas of it.
You mentioned briefly, I just want to expound on that a little bit more, that a lot of people directly go into developers to work for developers or for publishers. How do you facilitate that? Do you have relationships with some companies?
Oh yeah, well, the program was co-founded by Electronic Arts, and so they really helped us to set up the original curriculum. And of course, that was some time ago, and it's evolved since then. But we've also had major partnerships with Microsoft, and of course, we have a really good relationship with Sony. So a lot of folks go to intern at large companies, and then we've had situations which we had to come up with a rule for, where they go intern and they don't want them to come back to school, and they just want to hire them. And so I had to call some people up and say, well, look, you gotta if you're gonna give them an offer, you have to give them an offer after they graduate. That has to be the rule, because
that's a good problem to have.
Yeah, because I got all these parents calling me and saying, I don't know, should they drop out of school? And yeah.
So you don't teach that. That's the one. That's the line.
That's something you can't teach, is how to tell your parents you're going to drop out of school.
Yeah. Right.
I don't teach that.
There's no class for that. So before we get close to wrapping up the show, Mr. Bloodworth, has your opinion changed of the Unfinished Swan? Do you feel you're going through the game faster than you did the last time you played it?
No, I'm absolutely going slower. I'm just, soaking in more of what's going on. Yeah.
Are you performing the game right now for our viewers? Or are you just are you just completely immersed?
I've definitely stopped so that I didn't get too far ahead of things, and I enjoy this game. This mechanic here I kind of forgot about. This is pretty cool with the vines growing all over the place wherever you splash water.
But it's fun. I don't know what it is, if it's just that I'm looking at this game with new eyes, having you guys in the room, but I'm noticing little touches like when the vines go out, they have little yellow flower petals at the end that tell you where it's like you hit, throw the water at that, because that's where these vines are going to go. The color is going to
tell you exactly where you need to go.
Very nicely done.
Color is key.
Color is key. It tells a lot.
Good message for people at home. Well, just really quickly, I want to talk about stuff that we're doing here on GameTrailers before we wrap the show up. We have GT Time coming up, of course, tomorrow, along with Tabletop Adventures. How was Tabletop this week, Huber? As long as we got you on stage.
It was intense.
Hogger had a rough week last week.
Hogger, rough week again. Ian was visibly ill.
I got a really bad migraine earlier today. I had to go home for like 3 hours.
But you're back.
I came back.
We almost had to substitute you for somebody, but you
Yeah.
get no substitutions for Ian on the show.
No
He's going to be here. Come hell or high water.
Some-
If we go into the control booth and he's just like passed down on the floor, and then we're just like, oh wait, okay, no, we gotta stop. That's why Don's in the back there. Emergency meeting with Don. Don, come in, learn the TriCaster. Ian's sick. Mandatory update, of course. Speaking of Ian Hank, is going to be this Saturday. As we mentioned before, our countdown this week is the top 10 crowd-funded games, which you can tune into on Friday. Some awesome Just Plays this week. A lot of us had played Rainbow Six Siege, the alpha, which was super fun. Talk about game development, man. I mean, this game is an alpha. Like, there's definitely some rough edges, so it's kind of always really fun to get in there and break a game that these guys have worked so hard on. Affordable Space Adventures, which is a fun indie game.
Is a great indie game.
Mr. Kyle Bossman chatted with me about it. He checked that out, which is available on the Wii. I saw you actually retweeted that a couple days ago.
Yes.
We had a trailer that came out.
Yes.
Where they have some people coming in sweating and freaking out and pushing lots of buttons. And StarCraft 2, Legacy of the Void, which you've been checking out, Mr. Huber. We chatted about today, and that will be coming out later this week. Speaking of Michael Huber, is currently playing Mortal Kombat X.
Yes.
And we'll have a review for that as soon as you can muster it.
Monday.
Also, Pillars of Eternity, which you mentioned before, Rob, which we are extremely tardy in producing a review of. But it is
It's a long game.
It is a game. Is a long game. It is a
It's
game worthy of
such a
review.
long game.
So we will get to that review. Mr. Ben Moore is playing that as fast as he humanly can. And we talked a little bit more about being really cruel. I think that to gamers. I think that topic has come up a lot.
Right, of course.
Bonus Round covers that this week. The Sunday's episode of Bonus Round is about punishing games, which of course Bloodborne is out, so it's also a good time to talk about that. And Mr. Michael Damiani has put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into Kingdom Hearts Mysteries, into a 4-part series that goes into all sorts of stuff that you need to know, homework, if you're going to be playing Kingdom Hearts 3.
Xehanort's ambition.
I've been saying Xehanort a lot. And this episode, gets into... Is this episode about Xehanort? I should know. About all the names and all the characters are floating around in my head.
Impossible to tell with this
A
game.
new episode. Don, confirmation. This is the Xehanort episode.
We got confirmation. We have confirmation. We have Xehanort.
Xehanort confirmed. If there's
Xehanort
anything
confirmed.
you did or maybe did not want to know about Xehanort, you will find out this Friday for the third part of the 4-part Kingdom Hearts Mysteries delivered to us by the fine Mr. Michael Damiani. Thank you guys so much for coming in.
Sure.
It's traffic is rough in this town.
Yeah.
And while you are local, you are in Los Angeles. It is not. You cannot go as the crow flies.
No.
From where USC is located to Beverly Hills, and of course back again after the show is over. So I really appreciate you guys coming out. This is a really great discussion. Independent games is not something that we focused, or lesser known games. And Rob, you do it so eloquently.
Well, thank
Really
you,
does.
sir.
And
Thank you.
really is a fascinating department that you guys have there. Again, I'm legitimately tempted to go back to
Come
school.
on.
Yeah.
I just
Come
have this stupid
on.
full-time
Come
job thing that
on.
I gotta
I
deal
know.
with.
Whatever.
Yeah.
We got VO booths there. You can just do the same thing.
Exactly.
Viewers at home, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. You can subscribe to us at twitch.tv/GameTrailers, youtube.com/GameTrailers, as well as youtube.com/c/GTReviews, where you can find archived episodes of this show. You can also find our Just Played episodes and our reviews and previews over there. You can also visit GameTrailers.com, which in this day and age seems like a crazy thing to do. There's all sorts of other stuff there, including Game Trailers, a lot of the trailers for stuff that
Wow,
we've talked
Game
about on the
Trailers,
show.
really?
Yeah,
They still
believe it or
have those
not.
things?
Believe it or not. A lot of people, they try to sell you on other things, but
Yeah.
we're really a little bit too literal sometimes here at Game Trailers.
There you go.
Thank you so much, Mr. Daniel Bloodworth, for playing Unfinished Swan for
Excellent
us.
job,
I was
sir.
very amused. I got to admit, it was kind of hard to focus on you guys sometimes because it's such a gorgeous game. It's fun.
It's a little hypnotizing.
And thank you again, Rob Manuel and Tracy Fullerton. Where can they go to check out your stuff? What are you guys doing now that I don't have to sign up for school to check out? You mentioned Game Banks.
Yeah, we're gonna have our demo day, which is the final show for our advanced games. Will be May 12th down. If you're in LA, be sure to come, and you can sign up at games.usc.edu.
Game Jams. I said Game Bang. I've been hanging around Smosh too much. They have a
Wow,
show called
you
Game
have
Bang.
been. No comment.
It's rubbing off. Rob, you have your indie mega cast. How's the
Indie
show
Mega
going?
Booth, the Indie Mega Cast, once a week. I believe last week was Discourse. Like I was saying, next week is going to be Dark Echo. If you want to start playing around with that, I highly recommend downloading it for iOS, as well as G4 is somehow back from the dead. So check that out at Sci-Fi Games.
You never know with games journalists,
You
do you,
never
Rob?
know!
They go away and they come back.
And still every so often work something with IndieWire going into it. So, I like to keep busy.
This was a lovely discussion. And again, being Game Trailers, we tend to focus more on like big AAA stuff. So it's always awesome to talk about some really fun things to do. And I really recommend you guys go to the website, go to USC and
Yeah,
check
and if
out
you're
all
in
the cool
town,
stuff
come
you're
down
doing.
and see us.
Oh,
Yeah,
please.
definitely on your events. Is that stuff? Is your schedule up there for all the events that you're doing?
Yeah,
Yes.
there's a link right on the main site.
Awesome. Wonderful discussion. Thank you guys so much. Thank you guys for tuning in to GT Live. We'll see you next week.